Hi guys. Today I'm joined by Simon Simsiloo Andersson, previously known to play for PPO, professional Paladins player, currently playing for PML under the roster of Clownfiesta. Sims, while we're still on your name, you've often, even hilariously so for things like land, have had your name horribly either mispronounced or just misprinted. What is the weirdest way anyone has ever got your name wrong?
Well, the weirdest way somebody ever got my name was wrong, completely wrong. I don't remember exactly what his name was, but I remember somebody called me Sim City. So I was thinking that at first, like he meant that as like a joke, right? But over the time, I realized that he fully intentionally were not doing that on purpose. So he actually low key called me Sim City for the longest time, and this was in days in Downgate, for that matter of fact. And over the time, Cuz start saying that to me now too. So whenever Cuz and I talk, he tends to say Sim City, and other people tend to say it now too.
That is indeed a very weird way to say your name. While we're still on your name as well, can you tell us where your name originated from?
Well, I wouldn't say it's anything unique. It just came to my mind mostly. Well, it wasn't really only me. It was a friend of mine too. We were playing World of Warcraft. He was trying to introduce me to World of Warcraft, and he was like, "Yo, you gotta come up with like a badass name. You gotta be like amazing." So we were like, "Okay, if I type one word, you type in another thing, or like the alphabet things, or whatever you
Yeah,
ever
yeah,
call it." It's like we decided to add lion, and my name is like Simon, so we got Sims, and then we decided to add like Lou as in the lion, and it was kind of like cringe at the time, but over the time it became Simsiloo.
okay, that's very interesting origin. Besides Paladins, have you had any other esports experience?
Not really. I came from Downgate, and the closest to esports was Downgate for me at the time. Obviously, not in Paladins, that is. Um, so I would definitely say, like, if anything, I guess my personal love for competitiveness, it would definitely start from Downgate, and I never really made any teams until the end of the days of the game closing down.
Hmm.
But in reality, I would definitely say like my esports career definitely started in Paladins, and I really haven't been much in esports outside of that. But I always been a big fan of competitive video games, and I watched a lot of League of Legends and Dota back in the days, and I love MOBAs, especially like Downgate at the time.
Do you think this love for MOBA and this, even if ever so small, experience in Dongate influences the way you think and you play as a player in Paladins?
Definitely. Like a lot of the things from MOBAs that I have obtained and developed into Paladins has been just a lot of the thought process behind drafting. In MOBAs, it's so important for drafts to be perfect or at least winnable with. And since Paladins originally wasn't really using any ban system, it was a lot like Overwatch in that regard, where you can just pick multiple characters in the same category, so you had like mirror matchups. But over a time, they started introducing ban and picks phases and stuff like that. And my love from MOBAs definitely shown a lot in those drafts. And over a time, in my Virtus Pro days, I spent a lot of hours on towards doing paper drafting. And these days, since I don't play as much, I spend at least 42 hours a day, or not a day, but 42 hours under a week. It'd be kind of
Yeah,
hard to do that 42 hours a
obviously.
day. But over a week, I tend to spend like 42 hours just purely on drafting and strats.
Do you think other people in the scene could learn from studying things such as MOBAs?
Definitely, I think like a lot of people still massively screw up their drafts a lot of times, and they end up with a team composition they generally don't have a clear win condition with. And I think when teams generally gets a good understanding of when you have this pick, you have this this way of winning the game. It's important that people realize what each and every character does things. But the difficult part, right, is generally people don't really look at why, let's say, like Pip is good. People don't generally look at it being like, okay, so Pip has a heal, he heals people, he has a lot of damage, and has a really, really good ultimate. But people haven't taken a second of thinking about what is Pip's strengths and what does he enable. Like as Pip personally, in my eyes, he's a dude that enables aggression really hard because
Hmm.
he is so defensive. And the reason why he's so defensive is because you are a very reactive based character. And since you're so reactive, when you have like something like a Khan or like a Ruckus that can just go in and be really, really aggressive, you just let them do their own thing. And if they get focused, Pip follows that up. It's like that's how I look at it. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people don't look at an outside perspective on
So
each and every character.
yeah, so what you're saying is you wish or you think that by studying things such as MOBAs, they might gain a more analytical perspective into the game, which could help them.
Yeah, definitely. I think if they just take a second of thinking about it, like technically, like
Yeah.
this is why this character is good, this is the reason why this character is good. I think a lot of teams will see a massive boost in their performance.
So obviously you've played in some PPL teams before, and you're currently performing in the PML with the team Clownfiesta.
Hmm.
What do you think are the really big differences between playing in PPO and PMO in both opponent wise or even in your own team attitude wise, anything really?
Well, it's less risk that in the PML than I say in the PPL. Like it feels easier for obvious reasons. Obviously, we're not competing against the best of the best. But I think even with this team that Clownfiesta is right now, even with recent roster change, Alex for Devosi, I think
Hmm.
this roster can easily be in PPL level, and we can definitely beat PPL teams. But on the other note, like what I generally think, like the difference is, there's really not that big of a difference. The only real big difference is that you're playing to become something in PML, and in PPL you're playing just because you're allowed to, as in like you're getting paid, you're getting this is your job at this point, right? And in the PML you kind of just playing for free. You're not really getting any payments, you're not really getting anything from it besides like the only reason why people mostly play in the PML is because they care about the game and they want to prove themselves that they are the best of the best.
So, would you then even go as far as to say that people in PML are a lot more driven than people in PPO because
Yeah,
PML
definitely.
players feel they have something to prove?
Like a lot of PML players are really hungry. Like NA, I imagine like Downfall for wise is very very hungry to just prove
Hmm.
NA PPL that they are worth every effort to be a force to be reckoned with. And I can definitely say for Clown Fiesta, our main goals is not to be the best in PML, but to be best in the world. We don't really care about being number one because we know we can be the number one. It's just a question of can we prove others that we are number one, you know?
Yeah. So, a while back, you injured your wrist. Do you currently feel you're fully back in shape as how you used
No.
to be, or?
It still hurts. I barely used my wrist, and I save it a lot of times for tournament play, or when I'm just really, really tilted in scrims and I just want to kill things and it's just not going our way.
Yeah.
Um, but mostly the most characters I play that requires wrist aiming is only really Eevee right now, and I there's a reason why we try to limit the Eevee pick as much as possible for my own health, and also I have to
Yeah.
use my wrist for good performance on the Eevee. And as the recent week on Jaguar Falls, for example, wise, we picked a Shaolin for me instead. And obviously, we could have still picked an Eevee, but the wrist is still a problem for me, and I had to be really careful of using it. It's
Yeah.
way better than it was previously, though. Like it doesn't hurt as badly, but I think it's pretty much still. But it I feel like I just gotten used to the pain at this point. So I still feel it, but it's not as bad, I definitely say.
Okay. So you mentioned that you now have to think more carefully about your picks or even go for different picks. So would you say
Hmm.
that this injury has changed your playstyle and the way you
Yeah,
play?
definitely. Before I was just taking duels 24/7. Now I can take duels. Like on individual level, I'm so bad compared to so many other players. So I have to win with this up here instead. That's the reason why I'm spending so much more time outside of the
Hmm.
game and spending more time developing strats and you know stuff outside of the game like strats, drafting, and so on because I can't really win individually anymore. So I have to win by being smarter at this point.
Another unfortunate side effect of your wrist injury
Mm-hmm.
is that it led you into what I think is fair to say a dark point in a dark era in your life, really, where
Yeah,
you
definitely.
got involved in some drama, which I won't go into too much detail here because that's been handled and what's in the past should stay in the past.
Mm-hmm.
However, after that drama, there were some consequences for that. Do you still feel the effect of that drama up to this date?
Yeah, definitely. Like people don't generally talk about it anymore, and when they bring it up, we just kind of like make jokes about it, which is cool. Like I don't mind that. Like I've been long gone since then, but it still affects me from time to time. Like it makes me feel awful. Like all the things that happened under the time and how retarded I was under the time. Obviously, like if people know like the full story, I was depressed at the time and I wasn't thinking right, and it just led me to do retarded decisions, and which I do still regret to this day. But I think moving past it is really important. But some things like that whole circumstance is something that I just can't forget. But instead of just forgetting about it completely, I'm just gonna make sure that never happens and just grow better as a person with all of that happening, and make sure that whatever happens for the future, I deal with it way better and handle it more professionally.
Okay, that's a clear answer. Um, as you mentioned before, you tend to analyze a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I think is fair to say, and that a lot of people in the scene notice, is that people tend to flock to you for advice. This is both
For a
in
lot of
NA
times.
and in EU. Why do you
uh,
think people flock to specifically to you for advice, or at least game wise?
I feel like I mean, to not like ego or anything like that, but I do know what the I'm talking about. Like I spend so much time on just knowing every possible thing. So when most people tend to ask me, I also don't avoid them. I won't tell them everything, but I don't mind giving away some stuff to make the a whole scene improve. Because I'm not looking at it in a picture where, oh no, they know now exactly how Shin works in an outside perspective. So now they're gonna draft way better with the Shin team composition. In my world, I'm like, this team is gonna be so much better now, and we're gonna get so much more better practice. Because people are gonna be smarter, so we have to be better than them. We gotta prove that we're still better than them by helping. Obviously, I'm not gonna go out of my way to make your team suddenly godlike and give you draft. But if you ask me any questions, hey Sim, why is defense an effective advice sometimes on Pip? I'd be like, this is the reason why. And I think a lot of the times people don't realize, um, like that people is willingly open to help. You're not going to give away things,
Hmm.
and I think that's a really important thing, because everybody in this community really wants to help each other, right? But people are generally scared, and most people that tends to approach me, they don't they know that they can trust me, and they know that they generally like know that I'm a nice person that generally tries to help as much as possible without f***ing myself over and my team,
Hmm.
minus the Verge Pro thing, but but
But
outside of
that's
that,
in the past, right?
yeah, that's in the past. But it's still like something that I think is really important for the whole scene in itself, and I always be looking at that in that perspective.
So, to kind of summarize what you just said, would you say it's due to your excessive knowledge of the game and the scene, as well as your open attitude to help people?
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Um, you have a lot of friends in NA, and you also pop up to NA pugs quite frequently. So I think
Hmm.
it's fair to say that you have a kind of love for the NA scene.
Yeah, I really like the
What?
NA scene.
Why do you feel so attracted to the NA scene?
Well, I'm not really attractive, but I really like a lot of the personalities in the NA scene overall. I think overall though, like there's some people that's very special in both regions. I'm not gonna be too toxic to NA forehead, but I just think a lot of the people in NA is very polite, very nice, and they really have like a really funny personality to interact with.
Could you maybe name some of your favorites in the NA region?
Coscute is definitely number one for me. Since Cus and me has been homies for like in a century now, like since Downgate days. I definitely enjoy interacting with the Froner. A lot of the Pittsburgh's nice players I really like interacting with. Besides G Bunny, G Bunny's toxic, bro. I don't care what anybody says. He ulted me like 3 times on Frozen Guard and just jumped off the map as a con with me. He's like, bro, if you do that to me ever again, I'm actually gonna report your ass to rude. Gonna get you a warning, Kappa.
Okay, we're
No,
not
but
trying to stir up drama here, okay?
no, it's not drama, bro. I like
Yeah.
G-Bunny too, but I really like interacting with most of the Nightbergs players, and like even outside of that, right? Like there's definitely more people that I really like interacting with, and I think like a lot of the times, not to stir up drama with this comment, but I feel like EU really tries to avoid each other a lot of times, which is understandable. Like if you want to focus on your team, you do you, and if you don't want to interact with a certain person, you do you. All right. But NA is very open and they're very like polite when it comes to like, hey, I'd rather not have to have a discussion with you. Like
Yeah.
like they'll be straight with you most of the times, and if they're not, then you're like, yo, bro, just talk with me, and they'll be like, honestly, Sim, my ego is hurt. Like they'd be like very memey, and I really like people like
Yeah, I
that.
think it is fair to say that EU tends to focus not in a negative way towards
No,
either of
definitely
the
not.
regions, but I think EU tends to focus a bit more on the game and just playing the game and not as much
Hmm.
on personalities,
Exactly.
which can sometimes also lead to problems.
Mhm.
On regards to that and some problems in the scene, what do you think is currently lacking in the scene and are the biggest problems in the current scene?
Like when you're asking that, is that generally like only competitive, or is that also like when it comes to the direction of the game?
Uh, you know what? I think it's maybe even best to split it up because obviously they both have their own issues.
Yeah. So we take like the scene stuff.
Yeah, I'll ask the scene stuff first.
Okay. So I think the biggest problem in the competitive scene right now in Paladins, there's not much of an incentive to play outside of the PPL, and I can understand that, right? Like you have to be PPL level to earn cash, and the game isn't
Hmm.
big enough to support tier 2 scene, But I feel
Hmm.
overall, right, it's really important that if you're banking at the scene to grow, you need to make an incentive for the scene to grow. Like I like this is something that's been brought up in Overwatch, I'm pretty sure, but if like prize pools are like massive in like worlds and shit like that, you can just lower it and make that money that you cut from worlds and other tournaments into the tier 2 team, and you make them get salaries, you make them have a reason to keep grinding, and you make the scene
Hmm.
grow that way, because there's not much outside of PPL right now, and that's been the case for a very long time since PPL has been announced. But I think it's also fair to say that even before PPL, I was playing without getting money, and there's been a lot of other players that's been not getting paid at all and still committed to Paladins, and which is that's
Yes,
just
but to
how you
kind of
have to live.
uh, connect to that as well, I think it is also fair to say that even back then it was similar to this because obviously
Yeah.
you and me both have been in this scene for years now. So
Hmm.
we both remember the days before then. But even then, it was the few bigger teams at the top who ruled it and who signed to orgs and got paid in that way. So would you
Definitely.
say even back then, although it took a different form, the same problem still existed?
Well, technically the same issue still existed, but was not as much like of an issue as these days. Like back in the days, like there was not like big orgs or anything like that. It was just kind of like small mid
Yeah,
tier orgs,
yeah,
and
okay.
they gave you like a bit like a little salary. It's not like much of an incentive to keep grinding, but it's more of a you feel like you gain some growth, and that's kind of like that's just on you for being number one or not being number one. I'm cool with the old days. I just think these days when it feels, at least I don't know like how even Mojo Hires kind of wants the scene to grow or if they care about it. But
Hmm.
since they're making, every tournament being played on LAN now, it really feels like they're trying to bank at the scene, doing well. And it feels like if they don't put enough effort or they put enough reasons for you to keep grinding, technically, I guess, exclamation mark grinding, exclamation mark, it kind of like, it really makes the scene not really grow at all. You're just making the scene smaller in my eyes, since you're not making this, the tier 2 teams wanting to grind more to get into PPL, because a lot of people has quit. And recent one, for that matter of fact, to support this claim very hard is Bugsy. I can imagine that Bugsy definitely wouldn't want to commit, since there's not much of an incentive for him to keep grinding.
Yeah, okay. I think you made your point very clear. Thank you for that. In regards to the current direction of the game,
Mhm.
what do you think is lacking or is problematic with it, if
As much as
anything?
many as we meme about it, but bugs is like the biggest issue. I had scrims today. Leaks, by the way, forehead. I was playing
I thought
Bonking.
this was in the past, Sims. I thought it was in the
Bro,
past.
some things never change, okay? But I had 3 stickies on one person when I was playing Bonking,
Mm-hmm.
and I detonated and he just didn't do damage. And like that happening is just unforgettable. Like it's just, imagine if that was a tournament play, right? I just almost clutched a retake. I go on a low HP target. I get 2 stickies on him, and he just doesn't do the damage it's supposed to. Like when that happens in tournament play, you can't just remake at that point. Like there's just no way. So like bugs has to be fixed. Like you can't physically like play characters that is so buggy. Like even Shaldin falls into this category of having banana curved arrows. Like have you like seen the Shaldin arrow bugs? Where you just like go when it's supposed to go straight, it just like fucking takes a U-turn and just go like the opposite side. Like that stuff happens way too often, and in a competitive-ish environment, it's like if that happens in tournament play, you're gonna be so pissed. And game breaking stuff happens, and we have had it so many times in tournament play at this point that it's not even funny. And
Mm-hmm.
that's for me the biggest issue. And as much as we meme about it, Terminus is a problem, and he probably should be
Yeah.
removed from the game at this point since he's been
Or
banned
at
for who
least
knows how long.
temporarily taken out. Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
Um. So, as a veteran player, do you think the current direction of the game or the old direction of the game was better? And with this, I don't necessarily mean competitively,
But
as in
generally,
of the competitive scene. I just mean general game direction, because obviously when you started playing,
mm-hmm.
they had a lot bigger and different maps than they have today. In that regard, which direction do you think is better?
Well, as a person that's been playing Paladins for an extreme amount of time, obviously I would always say that I like the big maps most of the times because I started off with it. But personally, I think like logically, like there's no doubt that the smaller map designs has been way better overall, and I think the direction the game is going into is better than it was in the early days. But I think they have lost the direction recently, and not I wouldn't say recently. They kind of trying to fix all the bugs, but they're having really big issues. But it's been a very long time where they just didn't fix a lot of the game breaking bugs, but you fixed on the very smaller stuff. And I feel like when they went into that direction, they just like when people make the memes of, hey, get your free mixer skin on mixer.paladins.com. It's like
Yeah.
it almost feels like that's true at some point, because it's like obviously the skin team and the balance team and the bugs team is like they're all in different categories. Obviously
Yes.
not the
Yes.
people
Yes.
that make skins is gonna be like people that knows how to fix bugs, but it feels like that when they're releasing skins to us, when like Terminus is so bugged, it feels like they're just like, hey, we're throwing out money, so you better give us money. So it's like it feels horrible in some like sometimes, where it's like some characters like Terminus, especially for me, I get so
Mm-hmm.
tilted when I see him getting skins, because I'm just like, can you just not disable the dude and fix him? Like China still doesn't have Terminus on their client. Let me just
Yeah.
remind you. And like honestly, like
Wait, wait,
China
wait.
did that
Shout out to China scene, by the way.
right. That's toxic, bro. But it's like
What do you mean? I legitimately missed that.
I do miss them too, though, honestly. But it's like if China can do it, I don't see a reason why Hires can't do it with the game itself. Like
Yeah.
just remove him until he's fixed.
Uh, Kind of also leaning into that. Do you think you mentioned how you feel like there's a kind of it's a disproportionate amount that's being distributed to or being handed out to the bug fixing department and the department.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is something that the fault lies with the evil Mojo devs themselves, or perhaps Hi-Rez as the big corporate overlord?
Honestly, I don't know. It's kind of like hard to, you know, find somebody to like put the blame on. Either way, it's on the programmers mostly, but it also could be, the culprit putting less resources or less like management on towards the bug fixing team
Mhm.
than another teams. And that's something that, hires will fall into default, and the higher ups will be the bigger issue.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that there's definitely been cases of this happening in multiple occasions, and I know this has happened. But without having to go into further detail into that, it definitely has happened, but I don't think everything can be put on hires, because now they definitely put like resources into the bug fixing team. But I
Mhm.
think when when one of the employees that was supposed to fix Terminus just quit the job, it almost feels like they had to really majorly screw up the coding, because I just imagine that person. He's like sitting there looking at all the coding. Is like, what the is this? And he just look through everything. It's like, yeah, this is impossible. I'm just out of here.
Yeah.
He just leaves. He doesn't
Like
even bother.
this job's impossible for one man.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of moving back to the direction to map direction. Do you feel with the recent addition of the two latest maps released into Paladins, do you think this might be leading into a kind of third wave of map design? Because you've
What?
had the big maps as the first wave, and then you've
Uh-huh.
had the smaller, mostly current maps that would form the second wave. Do you think these newer maps are possibly a start of a third wave?
I don't think so. I mean, I feel like the maps are pretty similar to, you know, the older, not the older, but the newer maps designs overall. I think the two new maps, like Warder's Gate, originally, like when I start playing, I was like, this is not fun. And then over time, I was like, okay, this is not that bad. But the map still has some problems when it comes to like how physics and mechanics works in Paladins. The fly away to victory, like the crystal thing, it
Yeah.
just doesn't work. It just really doesn't. And on the new map, whoever thought it was a good idea to put slows on a map, like just normally, should just be fired. And then on top of that, you're making areas on top of like stones and everything fire, so you take damage. So you remove the purpose of characters wanting to reach those spots, which already, a lot of times are banned. Like on Bright March, let's say, when you're playing Drogas, if you touch the roof, you can get in issues in competitive play, but you can still access the area. So it's kind of like, what is the point? Like, why is this a thing? And then
Yeah.
their solution is now you take damage, and it's like, why? You just make it an invincible wall if you really don't want people to access those areas, and it just feels like really, really horrible map design.
Hmm. Besides being a Paladins player, you are also an aspiring musician. When can we expect any updates or new songs?
Um, I think I just don't have enough time to work on music stuff since I'm playing Paladins, but definitely via over time when I probably end my Paladins career, I'm probably gonna release a lot of tracks and a lot of music and just focus on that 24/7. Right now, I still study and constantly trying to improve on my music craft, but I just simply don't have much time producing stuff, which is the biggest issue for me right now.
Okay. Uh, Besides that, are there any personal ambitions that you hold for the future?
Well, yeah, I definitely say it. Like I want to like my dream is just to make it big. Like I don't care like whatever makes me big, streamer, musician. My goal is just to be proud of something and not having to look back. And my dream would definitely be become one of the greatest musicians in the world.
Okay, that's a clear answer. That also concludes all my questions. Sims, thank you for your time, and I wish you the best of luck in PML.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.